I've always prided myself on being a good husband. When I married Melissa, I thought I knew her inside and out. We had a solid foundation, or so I believed. We met in college, bonding over late-night study sessions and our shared love for pizza. She was the quintessential social butterfly, always at the center of attention at parties. I loved it, even if it sometimes felt a little superficial. I thought her popularity and ambition were part of what made her special. But looking back, I realize now that it was also her way of keeping me in the background, never letting me shine too bright. At first, things were great. We traveled, we had fun, and I dreamed of a future with her. But as the years rolled on, I began noticing subtle changes that I brushed off at first. She started spending more time on her phone, giggling and typing away whenever I was around. When I asked about it, she'd wave me off, saying it was just work or that she was chatting with friends. I wanted to trust her to believe that everything was fine, but in my gut, something felt off. One fateful Saturday morning, while she was out running errands, I decided to clean up the house. I stumbled upon one of her purses under the bed. I grabbed it, intending to put it away, when a small envelope fluttered out. My heart dropped when I saw the name at the top, Brian. I recognized him as one of her friends from work. As I opened it, dread crept over me. It was a series of flirtatious messages, complete with heart emojis and invitations to meet up. I couldn't breathe. In that moment, it felt like the walls were closing in. The reality of what I was reading sunk in, and I felt a mix of disbelief and anger. I had been blindsided. I thought I was just a guy who had a loving wife, and here she was, using me for status while betraying me behind my back. I felt like a fool. This wasn't just an affair. It was a complete demolition of the trust we had built over years. When she returned home, I was still reeling. I confronted her right away, holding the envelope like it was a smoking gun. "What's this, Melissa?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. She froze, her eyes widening as she processed the situation. For a split second, I hoped she'd confess, maybe even break down. Instead, she quickly shifted into damage control mode, throwing out excuses like confetti at a parade. "Oh, Brian, he's just a friend. You're being paranoid. I swear it's nothing." The lies tumbled from her lips so effortlessly that I could hardly keep up. She claimed it was just harmless flirting, something to pass the time. But it felt like a slap in the face. All those late nights she claimed were about work, all the times she said she was too tired for intimacy. It all made sense now. She had been using our marriage as a stepping stone while keeping her options open. As the conversation spiraled, I felt a cocktail of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I couldn't comprehend how she could be so callous. In my mind, I replayed the countless moments we shared, wondering if they had ever been real or just shades of deception. The pain was a heavy weight on my chest, squeezing tighter with every excuse she rattled off. I was losing the woman I thought I knew, and I didn't even recognize her anymore. After a long, exhausting conversation, I was left with an unsettling sense of clarity. I needed to decide how to handle this betrayal. Should I fight for our marriage or cut my losses? My heart was still racing, thoughts swirling around like a tornado. I felt an overwhelming urge to act, to reclaim my sense of self that had been eroded by her lies. But how? All I knew was that I couldn't let this slide. I needed to make a choice, one that would not only determine the future of our marriage but also define who I was as a person. I'd be damned if I let her walk all over me while she flaunted her infidelity. I needed a plan, a way to turn this betrayal into a lesson learned. So I started thinking about how I could expose the truth, not just to Melissa, but to the world she had so carefully curated around her. And that's when the idea struck me. If she wanted to use me for status, then it was time to drag her name through every forum she once flexed on. It was time for my revenge. With the initial shock wearing off, I felt a strange sense of resolve wash over me. If Melissa wanted to treat our marriage like a game, then I was ready to play. I sat down at my computer and let the thoughts swirl around in my head. The idea of exposing her felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I needed to find a way to make her feel the weight of her actions without resorting to anything illegal or harmful. I wanted her to understand the pain she had caused me, and maybe even feel a fraction of the humiliation I was enduring. I began by creating an anonymous account on various social platforms, places where Melissa often boasted about our life together. I knew she loved to showcase her glamorous lifestyle and her perfect marriage to her followers. I thought about all her posts, pictures of us at parties, our vacations, and her perfectly curated life, each one a mask for the truth. I decided to tear that mask off, one piece at a time. I crafted a message that would resonate, something that would catch her attention and those of her followers. The first post I made was simple but effective. Ever wonder how someone can be so charming and yet so deceitful? Sometimes the illusion is just a well-crafted lie. I made sure to keep it vague enough not to expose myself, but specific enough that those in her circle would start to wonder. The responses began trickling in almost immediately. Friends asking who I was talking about, others speculating wildly. I could feel the tension building as the comments piled on. I sat back, watching the chaos unfold while a twisted sense of satisfaction washed over me. This was just the beginning. I wasn't going to stop until she felt the repercussions of her betrayal. As the days passed, I continued with my plan, posting more cryptic messages and even sharing screenshots of the messages I had found in her purse, carefully edited to maintain my anonymity. The intrigue started to spread like wildfire. Melissa's friends began to gossip, and I'd see her checking her phone anxiously whenever we were together. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. I remember one evening, we were sitting on the couch together, and I could almost feel the tension in the air. She was trying her best to act normal, but the weight of everything hung over us like a thick fog. I pretended to be engrossed in a show, but my mind was racing. I watched her scrolling through her phone, her brows furrowing with every notification. I felt a rush of power knowing she was anxious about what was unfolding. "Everything okay?" I asked, feigning concern. Her eyes darted to me, and for a moment a flicker of fear crossed her face. "Yeah, just. People are being dramatic," she replied, forcing a laugh. But I could see through her facade. The truth was finally starting to seep into her perfect world. A few days later, the tension reached a boiling point. I had scored a small victory when I found out that Melissa's closest friend, Jenna, had confronted her about the vague posts. I overheard them during an argument in the kitchen, Melissa trying to brush it off, saying things like, "It's just some anonymous troll trying to stir up drama." But I could hear the strain in her voice. She was starting to crumble, and I was loving every moment of it. I decided to up the ante. I made a post that read, "It's funny how some people can project such a perfect life, all while hiding their true colors. Maybe it's time the truth came out." This one was sharper, more pointed. If I was going to do this, I needed to take it to the next level. The reactions were immediate. Melissa's phone buzzed incessantly, and I watched as she frantically typed responses, trying to put out the fire that was quickly consuming her reputation. I knew I was pushing her to her limits, and I had no intention of stopping. I wanted her to feel the repercussions of her actions, to understand that she couldn't just sweep this under the rug. But with every post, I felt a flicker of doubt creeping in. Was I going too far? Was this really the revenge I wanted? It was a tempting path, and I was reveling in the chaos, but a part of me wondered if I was becoming the person I never wanted to be, someone who sought vengeance instead of closure. Still, I pressed on, fueled by the anger and betrayal that coursed through my veins. I reminded myself that this was about reclaiming my power and making sure she understood the damage she had caused. There was no turning back now. I had entered a new phase of my life, one that was fueled by intrigue and the sweet taste of revenge. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to post, and with each response, my resolve grew stronger. I had opened Pandora's box, and there was no way I could close it now. I just hoped that in the end, I could find a way to come out of this with my dignity intact, all while watching her world unravel around her. The days turned into a relentless cycle of tension and quiet power, with each post I made sending shockwaves through Melissa's carefully curated life. Her friends were buzzing with speculation, and the whispers were growing louder. I watched her try to navigate the fallout, her usually confident demeanor faltering as the truth unraveled before her eyes. I could see the cracks forming, and it felt like a twisted sense of justice. One evening, as she paced our living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, I decided it was time to confront her again. "You seem stressed," I said casually, trying to gauge her reaction. Her eyes flicked to mine, and for a moment I thought I saw the real Melissa, the one who had been buried under layers of deceit. "I just have a lot on my plate with work and everything else," she replied, her voice tight as she walked past me. It was now or never. I needed her to confront the reality of what she had done. Maybe if you hadn't been lying to me, things wouldn't be so complicated," I said, leaning against the door frame. The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of fear, anger, and guilt. "What are you talking about?" She shot back, but her voice lacked the usual bite. It was clear that she was feeling the pressure. I took a step closer, determined to push her into a corner. "You have a choice, Melissa. You can either keep pretending you're the victim here or face the facts. You've been playing me for a fool while you flirted with Brian and whoever else you met. I have proof, and it's only a matter of time before everyone else finds out too." I watched as her expression shifted from denial to realization, the weight of my words sinking in. Her defenses shot up instantly. "You don't understand, it was just a stupid fling. It didn't mean anything," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "You're making me look bad for no reason." But I could see the desperation in her eyes as she struggled to maintain her composure. "You think this is fun for me, watching you unravel over your own choices. You made this bed, Melissa. Now you have to lie in it." Her anger flickered briefly before it was replaced with tears. I wasn't prepared for that. I had spent so much time plotting my revenge that I hadn't fully expected how painful it would be to see her break down. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice shaking. "I was just trying to feel good about myself for once." I could almost hear her thoughts, how she had used me as a stepping stone for her ego, her self-worth tied to the attention she received from others. I felt a swell of empathy battling with my anger. "And what about me? Did you ever think about how it would feel to be on the other side of your game?" I shot back, frustration spilling over. I had let her use me, but now I was reclaiming the narrative. "This is the consequence of your actions, Melissa. You wanted to flaunt your perfection. Now, let's see how perfect it really is." It was a tense standoff, both of us standing in the middle of our living room, filled with years of memories that felt tainted now. After a long silence, I continued, "You can either admit to your mistakes and try to fix this, or we can go our separate ways, but don't expect me to just sit back and watch you continue with your charade." Her face twisted in frustration and sorrow, and she finally broke. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. I was just having fun. I wanted to feel wanted." She sobbed. It felt surreal to watch her like this, caught in her own web of lies. But I also knew that her tears were more about losing control than true remorse. It was the classic victim act, and it was starting to wear thin. After what felt like an eternity, she finally looked at me with a mix of desperation and defiance. "I don't want to lose you. I want to fix this," she said, her voice softer now. But the sincerity of her words felt hollow. I had heard similar pleas in the past, promises that never came to fruition. I took a deep breath, considering my next move carefully. "Fixing this means being honest with yourself and with me. You need to take responsibility for your actions. And if you really want to save our marriage, you have to show that you're willing to change." I wasn't going to let her off easy. I was done being the nice guy. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. Melissa jumped through hoops to convince me she was serious about change. She started spending more time at home, cutting back on her social activities, and even tried to be more open about her phone usage. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all just an act. The shadow of her betrayal loomed over us like a dark cloud, and I didn't know if we could ever truly move past it. As I continued with my online posts, I noticed more friends of hers getting involved, reaching out to me and expressing concern. It was everything I had hoped for, and yet the satisfaction of her unraveling was tempered by the reality of my situation. I didn't want to hurt people, but at the same time, I felt like I had no choice. I had to protect myself. but deep down, I feared that the emotional scars from this betrayal would linger. I started questioning whether I truly wanted to fight for this relationship or if it was time to cut my losses and walk away. The emotional fallout was heavy, and I felt caught in a whirlwind of betrayal, revenge, and uncertainty. In the end, it would come down to a choice, one that would define not just my future, but also the future of a relationship that had once meant everything to me. Would I find it in myself to forgive, or was it time to let go? The answer felt closer, but the path ahead was still hazy. And as the drama escalated, I knew that I was only getting started on this tumultuous journey. As the weeks rolled on, my life became an emotional roller coaster. I was navigating the storm of betrayal while trying to make sense of my feelings. Melissa was doing her best to play the part of a remorseful wife, but there was an unmistakable tension between us. I found myself questioning everything: the love we had shared, the life we built, and whether it was even worth salvaging. In an attempt to confront this chaos, I started seeing a therapist. I needed a neutral space to process the myriad of emotions swirling inside me. During our sessions, I opened up about my feelings of anger, betrayal, and confusion. I was determined to understand not just the situation, but also my role in it. The therapist encouraged me to focus on my feelings rather than exclusively on Melissa's actions, which was a shift I hadn't anticipated. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find Melissa curled up on the couch, her laptop open with several tabs open to social media sites. It was a familiar sight, but it set my nerves on edge. "What are you working on?" I asked cautiously, taking a seat. Across from her, she looked up, a mixture of guilt and determination in her eyes. "Just some things for work," she said, but I could see the faint tremor in her hands. I decided to push, hopping to get her to open up. "Have you talked to Brian recently?" The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of our past. Her expression shifted immediately, and I could see the guilt wash over her face. "No, I told you before, it's over. I just wanted to make things right with you," she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. "Melissa, we both know this isn't just going to disappear. You can try to convince me all you want, but I see you and I see what you did." "It's not that simple," I replied, feeling my frustration rise. Her defenses shot up again, and I could see she was struggling to maintain her composure. "What do you want me to say? I messed up. I was stupid and selfish. I know that now." She shot back, her voice thick with emotion, but I could tell she was still grappling with the reality of her actions. "I want you to stop acting like you're the victim here," I said, my voice steady but filled with intensity. "You made choices that hurt me and our marriage. If you're serious about fixing this, then you need to take real steps, not just words." That night, I fell asleep with my mind racing. Therapy had helped me identify my feelings, but it hadn't provided any answers. I was still grappling with the idea of whether I could forgive her. The thought of staying married to someone who had betrayed my trust was terrifying. But what was the alternative? To walk away from everything we had built together. Those thoughts haunted me. Days turned into a blur as my posts online continued to stir the pot. Melissa's friends were becoming increasingly concerned, and they started reaching out to me more. They wanted to know who I was and what my intentions were. I carefully crafted my responses, dodging questions while leaving just enough ambiguity to keep them intrigued. One afternoon, I received a message from Jenna, one of Melissa's closest friends. She asked to meet up for coffee. I knew I had to tread carefully. The last thing I wanted was for this to escalate further, but I also saw it as an opportunity to possibly gauge how deep the rabbit hole went and whether Melissa had confided in her. When we met, I could sense Jenna's apprehension. "I just wanted to check in on you," she said, her voice soft. "Melissa has been struggling, and I know this has been hard on you both." I could tell she was trying to find the right words, dancing around the subject of Melissa's infidelity. "I appreciate that, but I don't think she's been entirely honest about what's been going on," I replied, looking her straight in the eye. "It's frustrating to watch someone you love lie and manipulate their way through life. I thought I knew her, but now I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of who she really is." Jenna shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. "You know, she's been opening up to me a bit. She says she's trying to change, but it's hard for her. She's always been so focused on her image. I felt a surge of anger at the mention of her image, the very thing that had been the facade of our marriage. She's used me for her status, Jenna. You know how she flaunts her perfect life on social media. It was all just a show, and I was the fool standing in the background, I replied, my voice shaking with emotion. I'm done being her prop. Jenna looked at me with sympathy. I can't imagine how hurt you must feel. Maybe give her some time, people do make mistakes. Maybe she's genuinely trying to change. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to believe that people could change, but I also knew that trust was not easily rebuilt. It was a delicate balance, and I didn't know if I was ready to walk that tightrope. After our meeting, I felt a mix of clarity and confusion. Jenna's words echoed in my mind. Could Melissa really change? The question lingered as I returned home, and I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring off into space. She looked up as I walked in, and for a moment our eyes locked. I could see the hints of desperation in her gaze, the desire to make things right, but it also felt like an act, born out of fear rather than true remorse. "How was coffee?" she asked, her voice shaky. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "We talked about you," I admitted, watching her reaction closely. "She seems to think you're trying to change." Melissa's expression was unreadable, but I could sense the tension building. "I am trying. I want to be better for us," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you." "Then show me," I said, my voice firm. "Actions speak louder than words, Melissa. I need to see real change, not just empty promises." Over the next few days, I watched her struggle to adapt. She tried to curtail her social media use, spending more time with me and focusing on our relationship. But every effort felt like it came with strings attached, an underlying desperation to prove her innocence rather than a genuine desire for reconciliation. It was exhausting. I began to realize that the emotional toll of this situation was far heavier than I had anticipated. I was caught in a limbo of wanting to believe her, but struggling with the reality of her betrayal. Each day felt like a test of my resolve, and I wondered if I would ever feel whole again. Then one evening, while cleaning up the living room, I stumbled upon her phone lying face down on the coffee table. I hesitated, torn between the urge to look and the desire to trust her. But the doubts were creeping back in, a persistent itch in the back of my mind. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I picked it up, heart racing. As the screen lit up, I saw a message notification from Brian. My stomach dropped. I felt like a fool standing there with her phone in my hand. I knew I was crossing a line, but the fear of being blindsided again pushed me forward. I opened the message, and my world shattered once again. It was a simple text, one that read, "Can't wait to see you again. Let's keep this our little secret." In that moment, everything changed. The fragile threads of trust I had been clinging to snapped, and I realized I had to make my next move. I needed to confront her again, but this time I wouldn't be so forgiving. I was done with games. Melissa may have thought she could manipulate the narrative, but I was ready to take control of my life once and for all. With my heart pounding in my chest, I set her phone back on the table as if it were a ticking time bomb. I couldn't believe what I had just read. The message was a slap in the face, an undeniable confirmation that she hadn't changed at all. All her efforts, her pleas for forgiveness, felt like smoke and mirrors, a desperate attempt to keep me in line while she continued her affair. My stomach twisted with anger and disappointment. I couldn't delay the confrontation any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I found Melissa in our bedroom, scrolling through her social media as if nothing was wrong. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, collecting my thoughts while she remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "Melissa," I said firmly, breaking the silence. She looked up, and for a brief moment her expression was one of surprise and confusion. "We need to talk." Her eyes darted to the side, and I saw the flicker of panic. "What about?" she asked, trying to maintain a composed facade, but I could see right through her. "About Brian," I stated, watching as her face paled at the mention of his name. "I just saw a message from him on your phone. Care to explain?" The color drained from her face as the reality of my words sunk in. I can explain." The panic in her voice was palpable. I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was it. I was going to lay bare the truth. Explain what exactly? I shot back, stepping further into the room. How you've been lying through your teeth all this time while pretending to turn over a new leaf. The hurt in my voice was unmistakable, and I could see her searching for the right words, but they were evidently trapped behind her guilt. I told you it was a mistake, she stammered, her voice trembling. I thought it was over. I didn't want to hurt you again. I got confused. Confused, I echoed incredulously. You call this confusion? You've been stringing me along while keeping him in the picture. The truth is, you never stopped. You just thought you could keep it hidden until you got caught. You're still playing the victim here, and I'm done with it. Tears welled in her eyes, but I was past the point of feeling empathy for her. The betrayal was fresh and raw, igniting a fire of indignation inside me. I want you to be honest with me for once, Melissa. Stop hiding behind excuses. Did you ever really care about us, or was it all about maintaining your image? I do care, she cried, her tears streaming down her cheeks. I messed up. I just wanted attention. I didn't think I would fall for it. I thought I was strong enough to handle it, but I was. I'm sorry, I truly am. I could see the desperation in her eyes, but it was too late for apologies. I had spent too long doubting myself and our relationship, and now the truth was out in the open. You think I can just forget what you've done? You've shattered my trust, and there's no way you can just sweep this under the rug. You've betrayed me, and you've betrayed the love we had. Her shoulders shook with sobs, and I felt a flicker of doubt creeping in. Was there a part of me that could still forgive her? I pushed that thought aside. The pain was still too fresh. I don't know if we can come back from this, Melissa. This isn't just a mistake you can fix with some heartfelt words. I'm done being the fool in this relationship. I'll do anything, she pleaded, her voice breaking. I'll cut him off completely. I'll show you I can be better. Just give me a chance. But I shook my head, feeling a heavy weight settle on my chest. You've already had your chances, and you squandered them. You don't get to play the martyr now. I've been patient while you acted selfishly, but I won't waste another moment hoping you'll change. If you truly cared about me, you wouldn't have put me through this. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, filled with the remnants of our shattered trust. I could feel the tears in my eyes threatening to spill over, but I fought them back. I had to remain strong. I had to stand my ground. I'm done with the games, Melissa. I need time to think about what I want, and right now I don't see a future for us. Her face fell in despair, and I could see the reality of my words hitting her hard. It was a weighty moment, one that would change the course of our lives forever. But it was a necessary step. I couldn't continue living in the shadow of her lies. I walked out of the room and into the living room, feeling hollow yet strangely liberated. I needed space to breathe, to gather my thoughts away from the chaos she had created. I grabbed my phone and headed to the backyard, craving some fresh air and a moment alone to process everything. Sitting on the patio, I stared into the distance, feeling a cocktail of emotions, anger, sadness, but also clarity. I realized that I had the power to choose my path. I didn't have to stay in this toxic environment. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became. The love I once had for Melissa was clouded by her deceit, and while a part of me still cared for her, I couldn't let that blind me to the truth. In the days that followed, I took a step back from her entirely. I refused to engage with her attempts to talk or reconcile. I needed space to think, to reevaluate my priorities and whether this marriage was worth saving. I also began drafting a long letter, one that would lay everything out clearly. I wanted to articulate my feelings in a way that would force both of us to reckon with the reality of our situation. That night I finally sat down to write. I poured my heart onto the page, detailing my pain, my frustrations, and my hopes for the future. It was a cathartic release, and with each word I felt a little bit lighter. I was reclaiming my narrative, taking ownership of my feelings, and deciding what I wanted moving forward. As I finished, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. I would present her with the letter the following day, laying everything bare. I was ready to face whatever came next, whether it was the end of our marriage or a chance to rebuild. But I knew one thing. For sure, I wouldn't let myself be a pawn in her game any longer. This was my life too, and it was time for me to reclaim it. The next morning, I awoke with a strange sense of determination mixed with anxiety. I had spent the past few days wrestling with my emotions, and I was finally ready to confront Melissa with everything I had put into that letter. It was time for her to realize the weight of her actions and understand the impact they had on our relationship. I knew that whatever happened next would change the trajectory of our lives, but I felt a sense of peace in knowing I was taking control. As I made my coffee, I could hear her moving around in the bedroom. The house felt different, charged with the tension of our unresolved issues. I took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline start to pump through my veins. I was ready for this confrontation. I walked into the bedroom where Melissa was sitting up in bed, her hair tousled and her expression weary. She looked at me with a mix of hope and fear in her eyes. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice strained. "Actually, I'd like to talk about something first," I replied, my tone steady. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the letter I had drafted, feeling the weight of it in my hands. I could see her curiosity peak as I unfolded it. "I wrote this for you. It's important." Her brows furrowed as I handed her the letter. I watched as she took it, her fingers trembling slightly. She unfolded it and began reading, her eyes darting back and forth across the page. I felt a whirlwind of emotions as I waited, knowing that I had laid everything bare for her to digest. As she read, I could see the expressions on her face shifting: confusion, shame, regret. I had poured my heart into that letter, detailing my feelings of betrayal, hurt, and the realization that I could no longer stay in a relationship built on lies. I talked about the love I once felt and how it had been overshadowed by her actions. Each word was a reminder that I deserved better. When she finished reading, the silence hung heavy in the air. I didn't realize how deeply I had hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes were glassy with unshed tears, and I could tell she was struggling to process everything. "No, you didn't," I replied, my voice firm but not unkind. "But that doesn't change the reality of what happened. You can't just apologize and expect everything to go back to normal. Trust is earned, and you shattered mine." "I know I messed up," she said, her voice breaking as she fought back tears. "I thought I could handle it, that it was just a phase. I didn't think it would come to this." "Then why didn't you end it when you realized you were crossing a line?" I shot back, unable to hide my frustration. "Why keep going? You made a choice, and now we're both paying the price." "I was scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Scared of losing you and scared of facing the consequences of my actions. I didn't want to confront the mess I made." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "That's not an excuse, Melissa. You chose to betray me. Instead of being honest, you've put me through hell, and I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. I need to decide what's best for me now." The weight of my words settled between us, and I could see the realization dawning on her. She had lost my trust, and repairing it would take more than just promises. I had been her support, her sounding board, and now I felt the need to prioritize myself for once. "I don't want to lose you," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'll do anything to make it right, just tell me how." I wanted to believe her, but I knew I had to protect myself. "I need space, Melissa. I can't keep living in this limbo. I don't know if I can forgive you, and I need time to figure that out. It's not fair to either of us to pretend everything is fine." Her expression shifted to one of resignation. "I understand," she said quietly, wiping away her tears. "I can't blame you for wanting space. I just hope that one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me." As I turned to leave the room, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. This was an ending I hadn't anticipated, yet it felt like the right choice. I wish things could have been different, but I knew I had to prioritize my well-being. I needed to reclaim my life, free from the shadows of her betrayal. Over the next few days, we both took time apart. I moved into a spare room, giving us the distance we needed to process. It was painful, and I missed the comfort of our life together, but I also knew it was necessary. I spent time focusing on myself, going back to hobbies I had neglected, meeting up with friends, and even throwing myself back into work. This new chapter was about rediscovering who I was without her influence. Melissa, for her part, seemed genuinely intent on changing. She began attending therapy herself, seeking to understand her behavior and what had led her to make those choices. The distance forced her to confront the reality of her actions, and I hoped she could find a way to grow from it. Eventually, after a month of separation, we decided to meet up to talk. I was nervous, unsure of what to expect. We sat across from each other in a small cafe, and I felt the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, her eyes searching mine. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I don't want to minimize that. I'm working on myself, and I realize now that I relied too much on external validation. I want to be better, not just for you, but for me." I nodded, appreciating her honesty. "I've also had time to reflect. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, but I'm willing to see where things go. I need to take it slow and rebuild the trust that was lost." She looked relieved, and I could see a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said earnestly. "I just want a chance to prove to you that I can change." And so, we took the first tentative steps toward rebuilding what had been broken. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be moments of doubt and uncertainty, but it felt like a step in the right direction. As I walked out of the cafe that day, I felt a lightness in my heart. I had taken control of my narrative, and while the road ahead was still unclear, I knew I was finally on a path toward healing and self-discovery. The lessons learned from this experience would stay with me, shaping my perspective on love and trust. In the end, I realized that while betrayal can shatter foundations, it's also an opportunity for growth. I might not have all the answers just yet, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, whether it was with Melissa or on my own. I had reclaimed my life, and that made all the difference.